very final thing that just... Oh my god, this fucking triggered me. I was just... On a deep-seated level, I couldn't get over this. This really fucking pissed me off. So brace yourselves.
Now all it takes is one single person at YouTube who doesn't like you to completely destroy your YouTube career.
Fuck! Fuck you! Fuck you!
YouTube...
We know we're under attack! We know it! We're breaking the conditioning! Ah! Ah! We're coming for you!
YouTube...
That feeling when you think your downward spiral make you a 200 IQ big brain individual, but makes you nothing more than a complete jackass, and you're embarrassing yourself, and you'd probably cut that shit out. Now, whom the bell tolls is none other than a curious case of Emplemon. Now, one of my fellow subscribers has recommended me to impersonate Emplemon. After watching a couple of Emplemon videos, I could say that impersonating him won't do any justice. In fact, I could even suggest that he's lacking the proper nuance on the subject matter. On today's episode of How It's Made, we'll be focusing on his questionable certification of memes, his politics, and his general rant on YouTube. Before we actually dive in, who is even Emplemon to begin with? Well, from my observation, he makes YouTube poop by day, quote-unquote critiquing YouTube by night. Not only critiquing YouTube, generally other people ever since his quote-unquote downward spiral. With that in mind, let's dive into his quote-unquote certification of memes.
I've had it with these motherfucking normies talking about my motherfucking memes.
According to Emplemon, he believes memes are a sacred cow that must be preserved for future generation of outsiders and must be kept out of the hands of normies, because apparently normies lead to the ruination of Rome or some dumb shit. Well, first off, memes is made for the people and by the people, not dipshits like you to actively gatekeep. And secondly, love the fact that they're ironically saying that 4chan users and outsiders are so woke in meme magic.
The people of 4chan are outsiders.
During my conjugal visit on 4chan, I would usually get these type of customer, the people who have no future for themselves, the clinically depressed, and the occasional neo-Nazi. Now, despite how impressive you think they make memes, they're clearly wasting their talent blaming people that don't agree with them, and Jewish people. Now, to fully understand the context, I managed to acquire some rather distasteful content to share. I won't leave the link to the description because I don't need my viewers to be red-pilled.
Look at evolution, shows us the solution. IQ test, IQ test, IQ test. No escaping your genes, we regress to racial needs. And adoption studies blow blank slate BS to smithereens. Average black 85, that is why they seldom thrive. Orientals score much higher, and they never seem to tire. With mixed race, it's been seen that they average in between. As Brazilians and mestizos Canades, diablos and pygmies can barely beat monkeys on IQ test. Facts suggest that the punks are not oppressed. IQ test, IQ test, IQ test.
Near the Auschwitz, the peaceful Auschwitz, the Hebrew screams tonight. Near the Auschwitz, the quiet Auschwitz, the Hebrew screams tonight.
And now my heart's at 120. Thank you for making me want to kill you!
Shut up!
I'm not lying at all here!
Get your stuff and go!
No!
I have got things to do! I need to get my children
You're
ready
making
for school.
excuses now!
In case you guys are confused, I'm referring to the video where Emperor Lin got defensive at Behind the Mean, because apparently Behind the Mean is ruining the meme skate as we know it, and then long and behold, Emperor Lin is surprised knowing that Behind the Mean is a human being, not some emotionless meatbag. So, Emperor Lin, it seems as though you got your circadian memes from a cereal box. Well, to be fair for Emperor Lin Accord, it wasn't very wise for Behind the Mean to combat fortune users, because they pretty much hate each other. Now we can talk about his politics. We're gonna use the Donald Trump meme his way to presidency, and Jimmy Kimmel representing everything wrong with American entertainment, for example.
Politics always makes people get in fights.
Are you sure they're not fighting with you because what you're saying is offensive and wrong?
No, this stuff makes everybody mad.
Now, according to Emperor Lin's video on how Donald Trump being his way to presidency, he basically made all the other candidates look at a bunch of shit-smearing baboon who couldn't make a convincing argument to save their lives. That, and people recognize him beforehand because he liked to display his wilted cuck everywhere. People found him relatable and quirky because he was the underdog. Well, I highly doubt that. Even with those factors, I wouldn't think he would win the election with his brand recognition and him shitposting. What I can actually tell you that people are actually gullible enough to drink snake oil, henceforth make America great again, and also he actively panders to white folk that want to lynch black people. And also, you should have a frank discussion with a certain skull. His name is Sean. He'll tell you why, and I'll throw in Restart video as a bonus.
For straight white men, however, it is easy to see why so many were suckered in by Trump. You know, there's the obvious. He positioned himself as an anti-establishment candidate in a year where establishment candidates were incredibly unpopular. He attacked the usual stable of Republicans running, said he was going to drain the swamp and so on. Really though, for our young white guys we're talking about, I don't think that Trump's political positions were all that important compared to what Trump represented. He was a fantasy in a sense because he was a white man who said whatever he wanted to, and he got away with it. He would openly pander to bigoted white people, and there's a big market for that lately as it turns out. His ideas are all laughable, practically speaking anyway. A Muslim ban, a big wall to keep foreigners out. It's cartoonish and ridiculous, clearly, but none of that matters. Trump was a white man sticking up for white men when it seemed like no one else would. Make America great again. You know, when was it great? If you're not a straight white guy, then the further you go into America's past, the worse it gets. Make America great again is a threat to most people.
One of the key features of Trump's economic policy and the reasons why he's so popular and seen as a supposed anti-establishment candidate is that he wants to bring back American jobs, or at the very least stop the outsourcing of jobs to foreign countries. He's promised to basically be like a strong-arm protectionist that will renegotiate NAFTA and oppose new trade deals and fight tooth and nail against any corporation that tries to outsource. Now, these aren't bad ideas, but they do raise a question. If the problem could be solved by simply passing a few laws and executive orders, then why hasn't anyone done it yet? Furthermore, if these trade deals are so bad for the country, then why do they keep getting signed in the first place? Now, Trump's response to this is probably that the country's politicians are all corrupt and that he will crack down on lobbying and that will fix the issue. But this ignores the reality of the economic situation. Even if Trump were able to strong-arm these companies out of outsourcing the jobs, it's hard to imagine that this would just turn back the clock of time, back to the point where America had a strong manufacturing sector and growing middle class, and make America great again, as the slogan implies. In order to understand why that is, we have to understand how we got to this point in the first place. Economic booms, whether they be the housing bubble or the rise of the middle class in America in the post-war era, can only last for so long before they're met with a bust. This is a fundamental nature of the capitalist system. There's booms and there's busts.
Now, let's move on to that Jimmy Kimmel video, because in that Jimmy Kimmel video, Emplemon described Jimmy Kimmel worse than Hitler because he's making fun of Trump, and went on a enthusiastic tangent about how liberals and people on the left in general are a bunch of psychotic, pussy-footed sea sponges. When you're finished being a radical, butthurt centralist, I'll tell you this: many of these liberals that you like to complain about are center-right corporate horror archetype. And besides, a lot of problems that you described that the liberals are complaining about have been mainly caused by Republicans and capitalism as a whole.
Maybe talk about the massive health crisis in America that's just been happening under our noses. Maybe talk about how 1 out of every 3 Americans is fatter than the Michelin Man. Maybe talk about solutions to our broken public school system that doesn't involve just throwing more money at it. Because I don't see why it's still necessary to force kids to waste 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 180 days a year to sit in a place they don't want to be when the internet exists. Maybe talk about how America's flawed infrastructure and urban design has directly disadvantaged the working class. Maybe talk about how huge corporations practically manipulate American lawmaking to maximize their profits by as much as possible. Maybe talk about how the war on drugs has turned millions of regular recreational drug users into dangerous hardened criminals. Maybe talk about the military-industrial complex and why we're still fighting a war on terror 17 years after 9/11. Maybe instead of vaguely preaching at people to stop global warming, you offer some actual solutions. Talk about the disastrous ecological impact of factory farming.
This is coming from the fact that you follow people like Tim Pool, Chris Raygun, Count Dankula, 1791, Prince of Simbae, Donald Trump, and PewDiePie on Twitter. I can use that alone to discredit you and call you politically illiterate. And besides, what's wrong with making fun of Trump? He's an obese, over-bloated, inbred slob in a wig. I would recommend Emplemon to either read the Communist Manifesto or join the Democratic Socialists of America, even though the Democratic Socialists of America are a bunch of left-wing reformist liberals that endorse totally not communist Bernie Sanders. It is something to be considered. Now let's move on to the third and final part, his YouTube war saga.
Fuck this website.
We can all agree that YouTube is fundamentally flawed. They're having too much fun either demonetizing our YouTube channel or just straight up terminating it. They like to kick us in the balls and or clear us. They're banking their paycheck with the whole Nazi recruitment summer camp thing. And yes, the whole Monkey Jones situation was completely overkill and unnecessary. Here's my problem with not just Emplemon and other people in general that like to complain about YouTube. You seem to like having your head up your asses, come up with no permanent solution, and like you reduce your arguments to just insults. Ah yes, calling the CEO of YouTube a horse. 10 out of 10, totally mature, your channel will be coming back. You tried to run off to other video platforming websites, but they end up going to the shithole because other YouTube alternative is fucking shit. You have two options. You can either boycott the website or actually throw a protest in YouTube headquarters in California. But you guys aren't going to do that because you don't have the balls for it. And you're afraid. As content creators, this isn't a real job. We're basically hobbyists. Unless we content creators actually organize and slay the succulent corporate pig, this problem is going to continue until the very end of this website. I mean, I see my fair share of people actually trying to take advantage of the whole algorithm. Hell, I even came from the League of Legends community that was rather infamous for basically trying to preserve the salvation of their YouTube career, just like Narcissus.
One of the things I think really hurt the League of Legends scenes creatively in 2015 was the Vote Brigade group, where a bunch of old guard content creators decided they were going to lock down their investment or their channels or their view count or whatever you want to call it, their income, by keeping other content creators down. If you weren't part of the group, you were essentially out of this content creation monopoly. This led to a lot of weird behavior left unchecked. I remember a few years ago when some significant content creators came up to me personally to tell me off the record that they were not going to call out the stuff other content creators did because they felt like they were going to get maced in public.
I suppose this video would need a proper conclusion. Emperor Lin thinks he drinks you two right under the table with his facts and logic, but he comes out nothing more than a butthurt reactionary. Emperor Lin did not get woke with his downward spiral. He just reinforced his bias by browsing 4chan. And now you'll excuse me, I'll be hearing from his lawyer. When I mean lawyer, I mean his butthurt fan face.